Thank you for joining us here on our Facebook or YouTube channel. It's always a delight to know that you're there and that you're interested. So thank you for being part of our conversations at the table. In fact, conversations at the table, I want to be that. So if you got a question that you'd like to ask, we'll answer it right here on this channel. And so if you hear something or you think of something that you like, hey, I wonder what this is about, or you want to talk about anything, let me know, because this is supposed to be and should be a conversation at the table. It is Thursday, 1 week from Thanksgiving. Hard to believe. We are in our Bible binge, and again, for the past year, we've been making our way from Genesis to Revelation throughout since last November, and we're getting toward the end. We're at the end of the Old Testament. At the end of the Old Testament, we have 12 books that are commonly called. We call them in our Americana and in the West, we call this the minor prophets. But there's nothing minor about them. These guys were major in their day. But we tend to think of them. We call them minor because they're small books. They're not the biggies. The biggies are Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. And those are pretty weighty and big books. These guys that appear in what is in the Jewish Bible called the 12 or the writings, we don't have as much from them as we do from Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, but it's a lot of good stuff. In fact, today in our Bible binge reading, Bible binge is a Bible reading plan. And so if you'd like a Bible binge bookmark, let me know. I'll make sure that you get one. Today we're in Habakkuk. It's a very short book, 3 chapters. And we know almost nothing about Habakkuk. In fact, we don't even really know what his name means. But what we do know about Habakkuk is from his writings. We know that he lived probably around the time of Jeremiah. He is most likely a contemporary of both Jeremiah, maybe Ezekiel and Daniel. Ezekiel's a little younger than Jeremiah, but the two of them, if you read Ezekiel and Jeremiah together, you realize that they're both using each other's material. Habakkuk is in that same time frame. The 10 northern tribes of Israel, the north, it's already been conquered. They've already been carted off. Samaria has been destroyed. That was their capital city, and the Assyrians are off the scene. Assyria was the world power at the time. They come along and they destroy the 10 northern tribes, and now they're no longer in power. It is Babylon. And in what we know of world history, Babylon becomes the world power after defeating Assyria in a weak moment. So now we got Babylon as a world power. And so that's what we find, because Babylon plays an important role in this book of Habakkuk. Now, by the way, Habakkuk is one of my all-time favorite Old Testament books. And you'll understand why as we get into this. But one of the most famous verses in the Bible, in fact, one of the most famous verses in history, is here in Habakkuk. But a lot of times we don't really think about the context of that verse, and I think the context is just amazing. So here's what's going down in Habakkuk. Habakkuk, by the way, is a very passionate guy. That comes through in his sermons or prophecies that we have. It's in poetry form, but man, he is very passionate. He's prone to impatience. He's prone to a bit of anger, but he's passionate. And a lot of what prompts his sermons and prophecies are complaints. And man, does he complain. And he lodges his complaints not just to the air, but to God himself. So that's kind of where Habakkuk all starts. In fact, Habakkuk's complaint all comes from the law. Habakkuk is passionate about God's law, the law that was given at Sinai. Now, like the other prophets that we read in the Old Testament, Habakkuk for years has been looking at the scene in Jerusalem and even Samaria and saying, man, there's a lot of sin here, there's a lot of injustice here. And so he begins to complain. The interesting thing about his complaint is his complaint is that God should do something about Jerusalem, about the sinners in Jerusalem, about all the injustice that he sees and all the sin that he sees around him. He wants God to do something. And he says, how long? Here's how the whole thing starts. Habakkuk 1. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear? Oh, really? Okay. So he's talking as if God hasn't been listening. Or cry to you violence, and you don't save. When are you going to save me? Save me out of all this. Would you please change all this? Save me. Why do you make me see iniquity? Why do you idly look at wrong? Man, these are some heavy charges that he's laying at God's feet. You're not listening. You're not looking. You're twiddling your thumbs. You're idly standing by watching all this go down. Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So, and here's where he's going. So the law is paralyzed, he says, and justice never goes forth. The law is never getting to do what it needs to do. The law is being trampled. The law is being ignored. The law is being broken. You're not listening. This is Habakkuk's complaint. How long am I going to have to put up with all this sin and all this injustice? How long am I going to put up with all this disobedience that I see around me in society and in culture? And how long are you going to put up with the lawlessness? You know that law that you gave at Sinai? How come you're not enforcing it? Now, we look at this complaint and we think about Habakkuk, and it sounds to us like a very good prayer. We do this, right? Man, I've heard it. I've seen it. How long are we going to have to put up with all this sin in society and all this stuff? God, aren't you listening? Aren't you watching? Aren't you going to do anything about all this injustice that we see? It's a good prayer, it seems like. And again, doesn't God want there to be less sin in the world and less sin in our society? God is listening. So God answers Habakkuk, and it's quite shocking. It isn't an answer that he wants. This is fascinating. In verse 5 of chapter 1, God says this: I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if you were told. For behold, I'm raising up the Chaldeans. I'm raising up the Babylonians, that bitter and hasty nation. And he goes on to describe how bad the Babylonians are. Oh, those people that are a world power, the ones that just defeated Assyria, and the ones that are flexing their muscles, even against Jerusalem, those guys, oh yeah. I've seen all the sin. I'm about to execute Jerusalem. I'm about to execute Judah. Yes, you're right. All that injustice, all the sin, yeah, it's terrible. You know what? I'm going to destroy Jerusalem. I'm going to use the Babylonians to do it. That isn't what Habakkuk wants. He just wanted some correction. He wanted a cure. And God says, you know what the cure is? The cure is we're going to kill the patient. And, we kind of know what that's like, right? With cancer treatments. The people, and those of you that have been through the cancer treatments know what I'm talking about, right? That in order to cure the cancer, you basically have to kill the patient in order to get that done. God says that's what he's going to do to Jerusalem. And Habakkuk, if you're so bent on making sure that the law is kept and the law is obeyed and you're seeing the law trampled, here, I'll give you the law. You want law? Well, I'm going to give you more law. The law is we're going to execute. We're going to destroy. The law also says death to the one who disobeys, death to the one who breaks the law. That's also law. Well, Habakkuk is shocked and mortified. In fact, at the beginning of chapter 2, he says, I'm going to just climb up on my tower then. If the Babylonians are coming, I'm just going to watch and see what you do. Habakkuk's complaining isn't over. This isn't what he wanted. He is absolutely shocked and mortified that this is God's answer to what Habakkuk thinks is a curable problem. But it's not. You see, he's using law, but he's pulling in another part of the law. You don't obey, you die. Well, this shatters Habakkuk's worldview, and we can see the transition even in Habakkuk as this all goes down. I mean, he's confronted with the fact that so many of us don't even, we don't like thinking about this. And in fact, we don't seem to get it. Even though it's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years since Habakkuk's day, and it's also been a couple thousand years since Jesus was walking on this earth, it's been a few thousand years since God gave his law at Sinai, and we still don't get it. Habakkuk's problem was he expected the law to save. He thought that, if we could just get these people to be of God, you need to fix this. You need to make it so these people are obeying the law. His hope is in the law. His hope and his thinking is that the law will save. His entire worldview is wrapped around law and order, as if that's the answer to everything. That's the answer to all of life. That's the answer to all of society. It's the answer to all of cures, that people would just obey the law. And he expects the law to do its work. And that worldview is shattered because he's confronted with the fact that there is no hope in the law. There's no hope in the law that God gave at Mount Sinai. In fact, the law kills. But there's no hope. The law cannot produce obedience. The law cannot produce the very obedience to the commands that it's giving. When the law says don't murder, the law can't make me not murder. The law can't do that. In fact, in Romans 7, it's kind of the opposite. That's another subject for another time. But the law can't save. The law and order can't save us. The law can't it can make things better for a while, but it's not the answer. It's not the long-term answer. The law cannot change people. And like I said, it cannot produce the obedience that it demands. So, Habakkuk is getting a shocking wake-up call to the law's inability to give him what he wants, and God's showing him that. But God in his mercy also shows Habakkuk something else, and this also just rocks his world. There is a context, and this all has been the context for that great verse that changed the world 500 years ago. Habakkuk 2:4 is this: the righteous shall live by faith. The righteous will live by faith. It's not the law that can save you. It's not the law that's going to help Habakkuk and where he's at. It's faith alone and God alone that is going to save Habakkuk and Jerusalem. It's not what Jerusalem can do. It's in what Jerusalem puts their faith in and puts their confidence in. You see, all this injustice that Habakkuk sees, all this sin, it's all because of unbelief. It's all because of unbelief. Unbelief is at the core of all sin. It's at the core of all injustice. Unbelief is at the root of it all. And so changing behavior is not going to save the patient. It's going to be faith in the God alone. It's going to be in the only person who can save. That's the only thing that can save. And that rocks Habakkuk's world. So after that big worldview change in chapter 2, verse 4, everything changes for Habakkuk. In fact, you see his complaints they just go silent. And at the very end of the short book, we have one of the most amazing statements. It's another amazing statement in all of the Bible. One that echoes Job. He's another guy that has suffered a lot. Habakkuk trembles at the idea that God is coming. I mean, that for Habakkuk is Emmanuel, God with us, is coming. And again, he says he trembles at that idea. It shakes Habakkuk to his core. But there is this at the end. He says this, and this shows, again, this transformation, or this transition in his thinking that has taken place through the book. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. So, though the fig tree should not blossom, Though the judgment on Judah and the land is coming and all that's going to go down, I'm going to take joy in the God of my salvation. That's the righteous living by faith. And if you look at what he's saying here about the fig trees and the olives and all that stuff, even though the world burns down, I'm going to have hope and trust in the God who can save me. What's missing there is what's gone is hope in the law. What's gone is the idea that the law is going to save. He realizes the law can't help me. Only God and God's presence, God's coming, can help me. And that is his heart change. And that's what we need to hear from Habakkuk. There is no hope in the law. There is no life in law and order. Though the world burns down, what we need to put our hope in, our confidence in, is Jesus. Though the world burns down, just give me Jesus. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. That's the story of Habakkuk. We're going to put all of our eggs in the Jesus basket, no matter what else is going down in the world around us. Even if the whole world burns down, even if everything we see around me, even if I lose everything. If I lose everything, it's okay. I still have Jesus. I'm going to put all my eggs in the Jesus basket. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. That is Habakkuk. That's the book of Habakkuk. And that's our conversation at the table. Hope you have a great rest of your Thursday. Thank you for joining us here on our channels here at the Table of Los Fresnos. Join us on Facebook and YouTube throughout the week for more of these conversations at the table. Until next time, just remember this. Remember this, that even though the world burns down, you still have Jesus. You've still got Jesus. And Jesus has you. Jesus isn't letting you go anywhere. Put your confidence and hope in that. We are loved by Jesus for the love of Los Fresnos.